Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of RoboReplay. We're going to be taking a look at all of the district championship and some week 6 events that happened this week, and then just try to see what teams are looking at, what amazing teams played this week. We saw some disgustingly good defense in the Peachtree District that I'll be highlighting later. This Jack in the Ball auto that we'll start going over was ridiculous and honestly might break open autos for Worlds, and we saw a very interesting shift in how teams at the top level are using algae on their alliance. So let's break it all down for you here on RoboReplay. Starting off, we have the Pacific Northwest District Championship. This is the Finals 2 match. This is Alliance 3 versus Alliance 2. On one side, the most popular team is Jack in the Bot 2910. You see them at the top over here. On the other side, 1778 Chill Out is the biggest EPA team that we see at both these alliances. Very competitive alliances in general, but Alliance 3 is going to end up sneaking us out, and let's see how. So starting off, I want to take a look at this auto that Jack in the Bot is going to run. Just look at them at the top over here, because I have a feeling that if they can perfect this auto, whoever is able to be on an alliance with these guys, if they're able to have a good enough teleop score to keep up with anybody else in the world, then they're honestly going to win Einsteins. I genuinely believe this. Because this auto is a little bit ridiculous. Let's wait for the auto points to get fully scored. Right? 73 auto points at the end of auto. And what happens is, basically, Jack in the Bot is able to go all the way around. They're able to put up L4, L4, L3, L3. And by being able to go all the way around, you essentially allow your third robot to just run a normal 3-piece. Right? We see these 3 here. And then your other partner to run a 3 or a 4-piece, and we see that only 2 of them hit, so this could potentially have been 80 points in auto. And the deeper and deeper your fields get, for example, Pacific Northwest as a field was a really, really deep district championship, so you'll end up with teams who are able to run things like these 3 pieces consistently, or 2 pieces consistently, even though they're like an Alliance 3 second pick. And this is going to be something similar that might happen at Worlds, depending on how your field shapes up. And so if these guys get on a field with a deep-ish field of pool of robots to pull from on like an Alliance 1, Alliance 2, and they end up with a robot that has a 3-piece in auto, then essentially what you've done is you now have a 3 or 4-piece on one side. These guys are going to hit their 4. You now have 3 coral here, let's say, from your second robot. And that's now 11 pieces in auto versus what another alliance is going to do, which is likely if you have like the algae type of robots that we've been seeing. Maybe you get 2 algae in the barge. That's now 8 points in algae. They get 1 L4, and then you have 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 1, 2. Sorry, then you have 1, 2, 3, 4 maximum, right? And so then the amount of coral that you have on this side ends up just being what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's 8 coral versus 11 coral, and if you're comparing the value of the coral that you're getting, since you're putting it on L4 and L3, these extra 3 pieces that you get are worth +2 than they would in Tele for each one, right? So that's now 3 times 2, giving you an extra 6-point bonus. And since we have all of these reefs getting filled up with all the branches being filled up at this point, across the entire world really, that's 6 points is now essentially equivalent to 3 coral cycles in L1. So in auto, you have made 3 more coral cycles to make up when already it's ridiculously hard to just keep up with teams that are at this high of a level in the first place, right? If you miss a coral at all, that's something we've seen a lot of, is that when alliances miss even a single coral, if you had a lead before, it drops significantly because you need to be hitting every single coral because of how fast and how good teams have gotten at these cycles. And this number 3 L1s isn't just 3 extra cycles you have to do. That is on top of the fact that you will also have to make up the difference by the fact that these guys are going to be starting with 3 up there already. So this is the 3 points just from the auto bonus. Not even counting the fact that they also have coral already that is going to be put up there if you have a robot that can do like a 3-piece or a 2-piece in like a deeper field at Worlds, which is why I think that if you are fast enough as a team, having an auto like this is honestly division winning, Worlds winning type stuff that is being played out here. And I genuinely did not think we'd ever see a team be able to pull something like this off, which is why I was constantly campaigning for the do a little algae in the barge, algae in the barge, algae in the barge if you can with an L4 and L3. Because I genuinely didn't think it was possible for teams to be this good at auto to get all three of these and a fourth on there. But yeah, so let's take a look at what 2910 does, because it's a really similar strategy to what we actually see 254 do. And what both these guys and 254, as we'll see later on, is they end up deciding is that because their fields are so deep, respectively, right, the East Bay Regional and then this being the Pacific Northwest DCMP, they decide to say that their alliance is going to do 2 coral and 1 algae robot, no matter what. And whoever is the best at algae is just going to do the algae, and we're going to move on. And so even though 2910 is a ridiculously efficient coral robot, the fact that they can do algae really, really quickly means that they have essentially become the algae robot of this alliance, even though they're likely better at coral than both of these robots due to the fact that their ground intake is so smooth and so fast, right? But this is something that 254 did, something that Jack of the Bot did as a thing. I mean, you can see 1778 also put in a bunch up, but these guys are more choosing to have their robots change who's doing algae. 2910 just decided to say, yep, we're just going to do all of them, and you guys are just focusing on coral, which makes it a lot easier for drive teams to process what your role is, and you don't have to do any of the switching, because if you're going to be doing something like this, where it's triple offense versus triple offense, then having roles be clearly defined is really helpful. And then after these guys are done with their algae on their side, right, you've essentially just made it so it's now Jack in the Bot time to just put up as many L1s as you can. The auto point boat difference here is just ridiculous, and it's almost uncomebackable at this point. And, you know, Alliance 3 just has a disgustingly good alliance, and that's why they won this entire event. They won the Blue Banner Pacific Northwest District Championship, and it's because of the smart strategy, right? Clear up your algae first, make your best robot, the robot that is the best at doing one thing, make them focus that thing, and even though they're better at coral, 2910, they do a great job at algae here. They put up all the points they need, and they win this entire event. And good for them, honestly, because it was an incredible event to watch. Now, I wanted to move on to what was happening in New England, as I thought the depth and changes in strategy in the New England Sosik Divisional Finals was really, really interesting to watch, as I was there in person and got to see it play out. So here we are in the Finals 1. This is going to be, this division essentially ended up being the Alliance 2 versus the Alliance 4 in the finals, which I thought was really interesting and showing you how maybe Alliance 1 might get toppled at more Worlds divisions, depending on how deep the field is, as with teams being better and better on that like lower echelon, it might, and Snake might end up screwing over the Alliance 1 to where you might not end up getting a good enough robot to get yourselves over the line compared to like an Alliance 4 who could put up maybe not as much as an Alliance 1 in terms of the first pick and captain, but they can definitely match them with the help of their second robot. And so in terms of strategy, what we're going to see from both these alliances at the start is they're just going to be running triple offense, right? This is a very common theme that I saw throughout a bunch of district championships, is that alliances that had faith in their scoring would just run triple offense and say, we think we can outscore you. And I think one of the biggest reasons this was, and the reasons that this works, is because there's no defense, right? And when both alliances run triple offense, it just comes down to who is the better scorer. And in this case, we have Alliance 2, who ended up with 5142 as their second pick, who was an absolute steal of a pick. I don't know how they're still available. They're an incredible robot. You can see them just absolutely burning through cycles as well, even though they are second pick. And these guys end up with 839, who is, again, another really good pick. So these triple offense robots are very, very good. But in terms of strategy depth-wise, there's not really much to talk about because of the fact that it's really just who can score more. And you're fully just let go loose which drive team is better at optimizing their cycles. And I think one of the biggest reasons that Alliance 2 actually wins this entire match is because of the fact that 1153 over here is constantly picking up algae off the ground. And one of the differences between these alliances is the fact that you can see the clutter on the field, right? There's an algae here, algae here, algae here, algae here, 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 here. There's coral in the way here at some point that teams have to move across. And the clutter on the field makes it a lot harder to be perfectly efficient when you have to deal with that, as these guys aren't choosing to take the algae off and just put it in their barge. They're choosing to just remove it in favor of just go, let's go, keep more coral cycles on now. Whereas the other side, 1153 is taking their time. They are putting the algae in the barge as a choice, saying, okay, we are going to take our algae because we can do super cycles, which super cycles are basically just you can hold a coral and algae at once. And so you're essentially able to just put on a coral, put the algae up, and then you go back and back and back. And it makes their cycle path a lot easier to run with. And when you're running triple offense, efficiency is key in winning matches. So having the entire cycle path cleared up was, I think, a really big help for them. And I did want to point out one specific anti-strat that I saw from 74-7 over here. So we see that if we look in the corner here, the barge cave isn't that visible, but there is a lot of algae put in the barge from 1153. And if we look at algae at this point, and you're, as the Alliance 4, you're basically done with the reef, right? 839, 63, 24 probably going to finish it off with only like 3 more L2s to go. Then every single algae on the ground is now potentially worth either the same as an L3 if you want to go up and place it, or the same as an L1. Because, right, you have the 6, plus 6, and then plus 4 for them. So this is essentially worth 2 points if it goes in the processor, or 4 if it goes in the barge. And since it's worth 2 in the processor, and L1 is also worth 2 in the processor, what 74-7 decides to do is say, we're going to take our chances with this algae, and we're going to try to throw a bunch in the processor in the hopes that it closes this gap. As this is only an 8-point gap right now, if this human player misses even 2 shots, that gap could completely change in who's winning the match right now. So they decide to take the algae off the ground that was there before, and they're going to end up putting a bunch of it inside the processor, just as like a Hail Mary to close this point gap. Right, and you can see it's 6 points right now in terms of gap, and if this human player misses, this could even jump to like a high point gap positively for the Red Alliance. And so I think that if you're not going to score the algae like the teams like 2910 and 254, as we're going to see, are going to do, and you're just leaving it on the ground, then instead of doing L1s, why not just start putting algae in the processor in hopes that it will win? Because the potential return on investment for algae in the processor, if you're not going to go up for the barge, right, if we scrap that entirely as an idea, then doing an L1 coral, sure, it guarantees 2 points. But just doing L1 coral isn't going to win you a match. Gambling on the algae on the ground, if it is on the ground, is, and I really like that idea from 74-7 to try to close this match. However, the human player does end up hitting all their shots, so I guess they move on, and they try to hit their climbs, and missing one of the climbs at the end here. And it's still a very, very close match, right? And you can see that the 10 points of barge mattered, but the biggest point difference was really just the algae that was being done by the Blue Alliance. Now I want to move on to how Alliance 4 actually won this entire series in the Finals 3. So the Alliance 4 here does something I think is really interesting, is that they will have their second robot move over to the other side as soon as they see 5142, who ends up breaking, start to come over to play defense. I think it's a great idea in general, and it's probably how you're going to win if you don't think you can beat them in triple offense game, right? As we saw earlier, the triple offense game didn't really work for the Red Alliance, and even though they won the second match, that was mostly due to the fact the Alliance 2 missed like every single one of the coral and auto, and we're starting off with like a 40-point deficit going into teleop. But let's take a look at what they do here. So basically, as soon as these guys, I don't know who on their alliance sees from the Red Alliance, they see 5142 coming over to play defense, right? And they immediately send 839 over to play defense on the other side. And I think it's a great idea in general to just have this be the immediate reaction to a defense robot coming over, as the fact is that we'll see later on that defense robots against triple offense really, really, really sucks. It is horribly annoying even when you are spacing the algae in the way that we've seen before, right? If you're splitting the algae zone, into, like this is where an algae bot would be, and then you have like corals split down like this way, so that one robot takes this half, one robot takes this half in terms of coral. Even when you do that, it is still obnoxious as a hell to try to deal with both the defense robots when there's three robots constantly clogging paths, as they're one's going to be on the reef and this one's going to have to go on the reef, and then there'll be a defense robot just in your way being annoying. And so sending over a defense robot as a instant reaction to defense robot coming over, I think is a great solution to this problem. And then it's just a good idea in general. And something I do want to point out is that both these alliances decide that they mainly want to just lock down one area. But I want to talk about what the Red Alliance decides to do against this alliance on blue, and using their scouting of before, of the fact that knowing that 1153 cannot score L4s, they're able to actually win this match because of that. And what they do is, so we'll see in the quarter here, right? This is 88. 88 is the only robot at this point who can score L4s for the Blue Alliance. And so 839 decides to just completely defend the side that 88 wants to play on. And because of this, 88's going to get a lot more less cycles, because it'll be a different human player feeding to them, and it's not as intuitive. They're just locking down 88 as much as possible. And at the end over here, if we check the reef before the end of this match, just before the end of this match, we'll see that there are 1, 2, 3 L4 pieces missing, when there's 1, 2, and about 3 cycles being done in L1. And the reason this happens is because if you're targeting the 88 robot that's only able to do L4s, then they end up missing more of these L4s, and essentially 4 points per coral were missed here because they weren't able to have the time to put all of it up. Even though they let 1153 go for free and do as many as they liked, it wasn't nearly as effective because of the fact that 88 just needed these L4s in order to win the match, and it just wasn't possible. It was great strategy by 839, just locking down 88 as much as they could, and it works out for them, right? As the point difference at the end ends up being 209 to 201, a ridiculously close match, and the difference ends up being those 3 L4s. If they were just scored there, and 88 had just like a little bit more leeway or time to put those pieces on, then they could have won this match, could have taken them to gold. But instead, Red Alliance coming in with a very smart strategy on who to target on defense. And I think it's just a lesson for all of us to learn, to make sure that you're always scouting your opponents, seeing where their weaknesses are as an alliance and as robots too, and trying to exploit it in defense if you do decide to go that route. Now I want to take a look at what I think is the best defense that we've seen this year, and left me in awe at how good these guys were at defense in the Peachtree District Championships. So here you have the Peachtree District Championships. We're going to be looking at this robot on the bottom left side of your screen here, the 7538 machine, and my god, they are genuinely ridiculous at defense. I cannot put it into words. Just watch this. They are playing up against 1771 and 1833, two incredibly good teams. Some of the best in the Peachtree District. You can see by the fact that they're Alliance 1. And, I mean, just look at them just making sure they're always in front of their opponent. And the speed on this robot is just beautiful to watch. They're so quick and able to just knock pieces off of whoever they're defending. And the best part is, they're able to play open field defense. Let's look at 1771 here, right? They see that 7538 is on them, and their immediate reaction, let's start spinning. And these guys are great, right? They just try to push forward in this case, because they don't realize that they're spinning, and to just rotate 1771, make them take a bunch more time, and just move on to 1833. They have essentially zero downtime in the value that they're getting through defense, because they're always either like try to go fully for the open field defense and then immediately running over, or they just let the open field defense go to try to hit another robot and try to pin them to the side. And it's beautiful to watch. And we'll see here, 1833 is having a horrible time collecting because of the fact that they're just hitting them constantly. And I mean, right, even with ground intake, 1833 still can't. Now let's just watch this here. This is a great interaction again from 7538. This rotating with them, and then if they translate down a little bit more, maybe rotate a little bit to try to get themselves flat, they could probably defend that for even longer. And we'll see an interaction here that I think is the best, probably the best open field defense we've seen all year. Just coming up really, really soon. And I mean, the speed on this robot is really what makes it so good, right? This is it right here. Let's just take a look at it. So 7538 is just perfect, right? Their front end is parallel to the coral station, and they're giving themselves space so that this is never a pin, right? Right now they are not pinning the robot because they're giving the robot space to turn. And just watch this, right? As the robot tries to rotate, they take their back end and they swing it around so that there's always one side flat. And then as they try to rotate again, remember, just translate downwards so that there's always one flat. They try to go up, translate upwards. They push them to the side, and they try to spin out, translate to the side. Don't rotate yourselves, just translate. And then translate again. And then they see that they're getting leverage in, and their bumpers are in the corner, and they immediately pull out. This is genuinely some of the most high level defense I've seen in my life. I mean, this is the type of stuff 321 was pulling out at Worlds last year. Like, this is so incredibly hard to do, especially with the truss and the reef blocking you. The robot's short too, so you can barely see it. I don't know how they're pulling it off, but oh my god, it is absolutely nuts. If they are at the World Championship, I have not checked if they are, someone is picking them, and if they're on like an Alliance 3, Alliance 4 in a relatively deeper field, they're probably winning the entire division because of how good they are. Like, this is ridiculous. Another blocked coral, just abusing the fact that these guys don't have a funnel. It's incredible. And they're always able to keep up with whatever side they're going to. And I mean, sure, they're getting caught out a little bit here, right? You can see that there's some cycles in which they're not able to catch them entirely. But the fact that there's mistakes in this shows you that this can be improved. And if these guys spend qual matches or something just completely improving their defense if they go to Worlds, that is like a alliance killer. That is ridiculous. I cannot say these guys praise enough. I cannot believe that they ended up like almost winning this entire division because of their defense. It was ridiculous. And I mean, at the end here, the red ends up winning, but wow, props to these guys. Like, that is absolutely absurd what they pulled off there against some of the best teams in the Peachtree District. Now, let's move on to our final match here. We're going to be taking a look at the Ontario District Championships with 2056 and Cybercavs and see what they were pulling out. Alright, so here we are. We are at the Finals 2 of the Tech Division of the Ontario Provincial Championship. This is basically just the Alliance 1 versus Alliance 2. You have the winners of the entire Ontario District Championship here, who will end up putting up 272 points in this match. A very, very, very high score. And it's 2056 and 4678. They need no introduction. Let's see what they do here. So one thing I want to notice is that 2056 does start off doing algae, right? You can see that they're doing a similar strategy to what we saw Jack and the Bot do, but then they eventually decide that they want to move to coral, just for the fact of we want to clear out our field first so that it's easier for us to score coral, and then we're going to start ripping coral. Until then, we're just going to clear off the algae on the ground, right? You can see that they're trying to get rid of all of the potential slowing factors of their cycle paths, and then they're going to start going. And I think it's a great strategy. We saw 254 use it in East Bay. We already talked about how 2910 used it. It is just a good idea in general, and it also means that you're able to deny the other alliance a potential steal of algae and potentially 4 extra points that they're taking from you and giving to their alliance. And I mean, the Blue Alliance strategy here I think is not bad. They have a robot over here that stole some algae and then just plays some defense. I think it's not a bad strategy at all, but it's just 2056 and 4678 is just unlucky. And you can see that their entire defense strategy is just trying to hit the pieces away to the sides so that they're able to defend the side stashes. But, I mean, when 4678 is just pulling you off and you feel like you have to defend the funnel robot, it just gets really, really hard to figure out what you want to do. and they do end up just deciding to go back to Algae, but at this point, it's kind of fruitless. They're down 40 points at this point, and in this game, 40 points when you've already filled up most of your reef is virtually unwinnable, unless the other alliance misses a ton of climbs. I do want to talk about what teams are doing with the processor, though, as there were some processor scores here, and we see that the other Blue Alliance's human player, 74-76's human player, is actually holding these two processor scores for the fact that they want to try to hide some points here, because these are actually worth like 8 points in total. We see that they throw them at the end of the match, try to give the Alliance a little bit of boost, and the only reason you do this is to try to force the Red Alliance to climb a little bit earlier than they normally would, but in this case, the point deficit is just so high that it doesn't really end up mattering. But it's a good idea in general. And we can see that actually the same idea of if you can't have a climb, then try to do the processor at the end comes out here. And we see, let's go back to 76, 74. Look at them at the side here. They're just trying to boost that number up as much as possible. They end up putting one more Algae in here at the end of the match, and then go hitting a park with like 1 second left. And you can see that the human player doesn't realize and then just tries to put it up at the end there. Which, I don't know how legal that is, but I mean, it doesn't really matter now, does it? Considering the fact that the Red Alliance won by such a ridiculous score. With its final score of 272 clean. I think that one of the things that these guys were doing on the Red Alliance was that they're just having their third robot just play defense on the other side. And I think that going into Worlds, the ways that you're going to see defense are as follows. You're going to see Alliance 1s who are just like, we don't want to go do triple offense because we don't trust our field to be deep enough. Right? We think that Alliance 1 captain and Alliance 1 first pick, right? They saw all the 2, 3, 4, ... all the way there, and then all the way back around, and they are now getting the 24th best robot, right? They're essentially able to pick the 24th best robot on their field and 25th. And so if they think that the 24th and 25th aren't really the good enough to warrant a triple coral strategy on their division, then they're probably not going to pick robots that are like doing full coral. They're probably going to pick robots that are doing like maybe some defense, maybe some algae, so that these two guys are able to do coral. And I think that having an algae robot on your alliance that is able to do algae at a very fast pace will completely unlock these teams. As we saw, 2056 was being forced to do the algae on their alliance, similar to 2910, similar to 254. And if you're able to find an algae bot this deep in the competition that's like actually putting up algae at a significant rate that can collect it off the ground for you, clear up your cycle paths, then you'll probably get picked at some point just out of virtue of they want a robot that they can have clean up their algae so that they can focus on coral. The other alternative is that they just say, oh, whatever, we think that one of our captains could just do the algae for a little bit, and we'll just run a double coral, one algae bot until we finish coral, and then we'll do triple coral. And then with this last pick, we can take like a defense robot if we want, because we have 2 picks back to back. And so we essentially have had a strategy that we now, if we want to put a defense robot in because we've been counter-stratted with the triple offense, then we could shove them in instead of one of our secondary coral robots. And if we want a triple offense strategy, we can put that in against like alliances like an Alliance 8, who won't have the means to send a defense robot over because they need to have an extra robot scoring to keep up with you in the first place. So that's one of the ways that I think that you'll see defense. The other way I think is that if these Alliance 4, 3, and 2, right, think that Alliance 1 is just really, really hard to compete against, and if you're like on the edge of beating them in terms of firepower, then the difference in there could be these guys all just say we want a defense robot because we think that if these guys slow down Alliance 1 a little bit, we can end up pushing past them in general, and maybe we can make some upsets happen. And I think 2019 Curie was one of the biggest examples of this that I remember, at least, where Alliance 4 ended up winning the entire division because their defense robot was able to shut down Alliance 1, even though Alliance 1 had so much more firepower than they did. Right? And defense can be like the Hail Mary pick that you make. I suspect that Alliance 4 will probably end up taking like a defense robot depending on the pick that they have, because they want the best defense robot on the field. And then as you go later and later, depending on how people think defense robots look, they'll either choose to, let's take an algae first and then drop defense for a second pick, or third pick rather, in this case, as it's worlds. Or people are saying, okay, Alliance Force says, okay, the algae robot, we really, really want the number one algae robot on this field, so we'll take them now and then drop defense for later because we think that teams are good enough that we can teach them. And that's probably how I see defense going. I don't think that you'll see 8th Alliances pulling it out that much, as unless you're on like an Archimedes 2023 field where the alliances are stacked top to bottom, I don't think that teams are going to, on the 8th Alliance, have the firepower necessary to just buy their first 2 robots to just send a defense robot over in general. Those are my thoughts on Week 6, the matches that I've watched. I thought they were really, really awesome this week. I mean, I would highly recommend looking at some more of the New England District Championship matches. I thought they were really entertaining to watch. Really good depth of strategy. That's where I was this weekend. But all the matches I watched this weekend from District Championships in general were awesome to watch. Really representative of what I think Worlds fields might look like. And honestly, some divisions, like the Pacific Northwest Division, might end up being harder than some Worlds divisions, depending on how we see some divisions get shaped out as we hit our 600 mark of teams registered for the event. I will be at Worlds on the Friday, and if you want to check me out, I will likely be at the 1073 pits helping out my team, but please come say hi if you're interested. If you have any questions, I'd love to talk about strategy in general with you. But yeah, that was another episode of RoboReplay. Thank you for watching, and if you qualify for Worlds, good luck.